The next detail that I'd like to add is the slot for the cartridge. And if we go into side view or any one of these orthographic views, then we can see that it extends out a little bit beyond the body. And if we look up here from the back view, we can tell that the cartridge itself is a little bit chunky and needs that extra space. So first things first, we can extrude this downwards just a little bit and make that shape. So let's hit tab to go into edit mode here. And to go to back view, I can hit Control and 7 on my number pad. And we can cut out the shape to extrude with our knife tool. So I'll go into X-ray view to see the line work through it, but right now I have all of the other pieces kind of in the way, and I don't really want to see them all right now. So what I'll do is hit 1 to go to vertex select mode, select all of those top vertices, and then just hit H to hide. Or you could also go to Mesh, Show and Hide. We could also reveal hidden with Alt-H. But I'll hit H to hide and then go back to the bottom view with Control 7. And then very quickly just hit K to bring up my knife tool. Click on the bottom left corner vertex and just bring this all the way up. And we don't have to be exact. If we want to go in a straight line, we can hit A to angle constrain. But in this case, it's being a little bit finicky. So I'm going to turn that off and just go freeform here. And go back down here and then hit enter. So now that we have this shape, we do want it to line up exactly. So since we have our snapping set to vertex, I can just move this vertex along the x-axis, hold Control and hover my mouse over that bottom vertex, and then do the same thing here to get those perfectly vertical lines. Move it along the x-axis only, hold Control to enable snapping temporarily, and then hover the mouse over that bottom vertex. And then to straighten out this top one, I could either do the same thing but on the y-axis, or I could select both of these, hit S and Y to scale along the y-axis, and scale it to 0. That will also flatten it out. So now that we have a cutout in the correct shape, I can hit 3 to go to face select mode and select that shape, go to side view, and bring that down along the z-axis. Then to create that angle, all I need to do is go to vertex select mode with 1, box select those back vertices, and pull them in along the y-axis. Now we're pretty close to finished with the overall shape here, but if we look at something from one of the other views, then you'll notice we have these bevels here on the side, and they're a little bit too big to be enabled through our bevel modifier. So we'll add them in edit mode. To do that, let's just hit 2 to go to edge select mode and select both the edges on the left and the right. And then let's go to back view with Control and 1. That way we can actually line these up. And then just hit Control B and bevel that up. And it looks like we missed something with our selection here. So I'll hit Control Z and undo that. And we might have a problem. I think I might have missed with my knife tool. It looks like we're getting some duplicate vertices here. So what I can do to get rid of those really quickly is just select both of them and hit M to merge and go to merge at last. And that's also in the mesh menu under merge. Or if we wanted to do that really quickly, we could select the area, any area which might have doubles. I'll do that on this side as well. And in fact, we could just select everything since everything else is pretty far apart. But just select the area that would contain those duplicate vertices. I thought I clicked exactly on the vertex with my knife tool, but I guess I was mistaken. But we can hit M and then merge by distance. And now anything that's really, really close together will just get merged together. And so that should fix that issue. And if we go to our edge select mode now and go to back view with Control and 3, or Control and 1, excuse me, Control B, and there we go. So it's not going to line up perfectly here, but that's okay, as long as we get it pretty close. Then I'll head to the bottom view with Control 7. And let's make these slots. The easiest way to do that would be to add an edge loop. But right now, we're working with a bunch of n-gons, and edge loops can't pass through n-gons. So we'll just get a single vertex. What I'll do then is make a cut here at the bottom to kind of slice off this part and make that a quad. So I'll hit K to go to my knife tool, click on that edge, bring it over, and to angle constrain it, I'll hit A. That way we get a nice straight line. Left click on the right edge, and then hit enter to confirm. Similarly, to make a quad up here, I'll bring up my knife tool again, hover over the vertex on the left, hit A, go to the vertex on the right, and click enter. And just make sure that that cuts right through here. It doesn't go all the way down, it just cuts right across. And now we have an area which we can add some edge loops in. But we don't really need the edge loops going all the way down there. So what we can do temporarily, just to stop the edge loops from continuing on, is make this bottom face an n-gon. So right now it only has 4 vertices, but if we just take this bottom edge, right click and subdivide and add that extra vertex right there in the middle, go to vertex mode, we can see it, then now the edge loops can't go all the way down. So with that blocked off, I'll go back to the bottom view, Control R to add an edge loop. And if I slide this over to the left, it'll start to bend and kind of conform to that left or the right. And I want it to be perfectly straight. So I'll hit escape and cancel the transformation, but it'll still keep the edge loop. And then this one, I'll just move all the way over to the left, right in the middle here of that slot. So not to the end of the slot, but right in the middle. Then I'll do that same thing again, Control R, but now I can't actually get that straight line. So what I'll do is I'll just left click to confirm anywhere, hit S, X, and 0, and that'll flatten it out along the X axis. Again, slide that over to the middle, and now since both sides of these are straight, I can hit Control R and just scroll up on my mouse wheel until I have exactly the right number of cuts. Since they're evenly distributed, it should work perfectly. So I'll left click and then enter to confirm, and now we're ready to start making these holes. I'll hit 2 to go to edge select mode here and make sure we have all of these edges selected. Or we could box select horizontally this way, just make sure we don't have those middle ones selected. And then to make 2 edges out of 1 for each of these, I'll hit Control B and bevel them up. Then lastly, to make them holes, we just need to hit E to extrude and pull them up. I don't think it matters exactly how far you pull it up, but something like that should be fine. I'll hit Z and toggle off X-ray, so we can see this better. And I'd say that's looking pretty good. Now the last thing we need to do for this cartridge piece is make the actual slot. So for that we need to unhide everything else. So I'll hit Alt-H to unhide, and we need to create a shape right in here that we can extrude backwards into the body. Now this line might line up with that exactly, but it also might not. So let's hit Control and 1, turn on X-ray again, and we can see that it doesn't quite line up the way that we want it to. So we're gonna have to add another edge loop or another cut somewhere in there. A pretty natural one might be connecting these vertices. Let's go to solid view again, turn off X-ray. We have these 2 vertices right here that we could connect, and that'll bring us closer to the shape that we need. So I'll hit J to connect those, and that'll give us a nice straight line, except for this middle part, which curves up for whatever reason. I'm not entirely sure why, but if we take this left vertex, Control, and then select the right vertex to select the shortest path between the 2, we can easily flatten this out just by hitting S, Z, and 0 to straighten it out along the Z axis. Then to make sure it's level with the other vertices on the right and the left, I'll just pull this in along the Z axis, hold Control to enable snapping, and hover my mouse over one of these vertices. Then release my mouse and release Control. Now we have an area that we can inset to get that shape. So let's select all of these faces here. I'll hit 3 to go to face select mode and just box select. Control 1 to go to back view and turn on X-ray temporarily. And then it's a little bit messy, but we can still see what's selected here. I'll hit I to inset until it's about the right width. And it looks like the bottom line is about right too. So that's working pretty well, but we just need to bring the top part down. So I'll go back to vertex select mode with 1 and then deselect this bottom portion by holding Control so I can box deselect that area. So I only have the top portion selected, and then I can move that down along the Z-axis until it matches that line. Then I'll turn off X-ray again, select those faces, E to extrude, bring that in along the Y-axis, and then to flatten it out, just hit S, Y, and 0. We could make some details on the inside here, but since we're going to be having a cartridge inside of this the whole time, I'm not really going to worry about it. What I do want to do now, though, is add some bevels to what we just created. So let's start here with the back. I'll hit 2 to go to edge select mode, and then loop select all the way around our grill insets. I'll hold Shift and continue loop selecting all the way around these, just so I can get all of them. And then over in the sidebar, under mean bevel weight, just increase this a little bit. I wouldn't want to go too high, but maybe somewhere around 0.5 or 0.6. Then let's take some of the other sharp edges and do the same thing. Maybe this line that runs all the way through and creates that sort of angle. I'll select the first one, hold Control, and then select the one on the right. It looks like it didn't quite get the path that I wanted, so I'll hit Control-Z and undo that. Maybe select the one in the middle, and it still goes around, which is really weird. But I guess I can also loop select, and that'll select all the way through, and then just turn up the mean bevel weight right about there. I wouldn't go all the way, but about the same as before. And then let's also just take the rest of these sharp edges. Let's go up there, up the sides, along the sides. Let's also do the bottom. And up and around the top. Let's see, I don't want to loop select that, but I'll select everything else in between. Okay, that should be good for now. Oh, let's also do these edges because they're pretty sharp as well. That'll select those faces, but that's fine. And then just increase the mean bevel weight. All right, and before we did add that extra vertex that was just kind of hanging out here to make this bottom part an n-gon, but since it's already an n-gon anyway, we don't need this anymore, so we can get rid of that vertex. But instead of deleting it, because if we hit delete and vertices, it'll remove the face that's surrounding it because the face kind of depends on that vertex. We can dissolve it instead, and that'll make it go away while not disconnecting all those faces. So let's hit delete, and then dissolve vertices, and that'll get rid of it, but keep the surrounding geometry. Perfect, so let's finish off this lesson just by adding bevels to the rest of the device. I'll hit 2 to go to edge select mode, and first let's go all the way around the outside here. That's a pretty easy loop select, and I think that just continues all the way around. And we can turn this one up pretty high. I'll go all the way to 1. Let's do the same for the top here. And that's going to end because we don't have a continuous loop all the way around, but we can do that loop cut, but we can do that loop select a couple times. And just continue until it goes all the way around. Increase that mean bevel weight. And up here where we have those little bite marks, we can decide whether we want to bevel the sharp parts or not. I think I would like to, but we have to be really careful so that there's not too much overlap or anything. Let's just select those sharp parts and just give the light something to glint off of when it hits it. I think that's a nice effect. Alright, then we just have a few stray edges down here to bevel as well. Let's go around the cartridge slot here. Turn that up. And we could go around the inside too. I don't think it matters a whole lot since we won't be seeing it, but we may as well since we're at it. And do the inside corners. Okay, and one thing that I don't necessarily like about these bevels is that we're getting these triangles here on the corners, and they don't quite look the way that I want them to. But we can actually change the modifier to bevel these areas in a different way. So right now if we go to geometry, under meter outer, everything's set to sharp. And indeed, these outer bevels do look sharp. But if we set that to patch, then we'll get something that's a little bit more gradual. But it's also going to really stretch out this area. And the reason for that is just because we have these edges that are kind of pulling the bevel in that direction. So luckily, since we're already working with n-gons, we can very quickly get rid of some of these edges that are causing the problem. So I'll just select the edges that are connecting the corners here. Hit delete. And this time, dissolve edges. That'll get rid of them while keeping the rest of the geometry. And now that bevel isn't being pulled in any weird directions. And just to clean things up since we're working with n-gons anyway, I can take this whole edge loop and dissolve that as well. Delete and dissolve edges. I can do the same thing here. Delete and dissolve edges. And if I really wanted to simplify things, I could get rid of all of these extra edge loops here on the inside as well, where it's just a flat surface. I could box select all of these edges, delete, and dissolve edges. That's pretty specific to working with n-gons and hard surfaces, so it's not something I do very often. But in this case, it comes in handy, because now I can really easily select these faces if I need to. And for example, I could take these sides, and just hit S and X, and make this a little bit smaller, so that there's a little bit more breathing room here on the sides. And you can see that that sort of freaked out for a second as we got a little bit too close to that edge. But that's because the geometry there isn't really behaving well with the bevels. But we can fix that by also beveling these sharp areas as well, which we forgot earlier. So I'll take these two sides and increase the mean bevel weight there. And also here, with those inside edges. And there we have it. So we have a lot of edges meeting in these areas, and there's not really any perfect solution. But for now, I think this works pretty well. I'm sure you can see at this point how working with bevels can get a little bit complicated. That's why I'm really glad that we're working with the modifier instead of doing everything by hand in edit mode, where it would be really hard to undo or adjust later. Alright, let's give the device one last look over to see if there's any other things that we forgot to bevel. But I think we got all of the sharp areas. Let's look down here. Okay, I think we got it. I'll hit 7 to go to top view to flip myself back over, and we can see our final result. In the next lesson, we'll add the screen and the speakers.